is 6:03. This is the Economic Development Commission. It is Thursday, November 14th. First agenda item that we have tonight is to vote on the minutes. Then we will vote on the 2025 schedule. Do we have a quorum, Tony?
We do. We have 5.
We can vote, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then Justin and Denise have joined us from Goldman in New York, long awaited. We've been talking a lot about you and looking forward to the introduction. Then I've got a few chair updates. We'll talk a little bit about POCD. We'll get an update on 2030 task force, the business retention subcommittee that we're forming. Then we'll talk about new business and specifically the retail pop-ups. So we got a bit of an agenda. But I guess we'll start by taking a vote on the minutes. Do we have a motion? The minutes from October 10th. Steve, a second?
Second?
Scott will second it. All in favor? Okay. And then Tony had routed the meeting schedule for next year. I mean, assuming we don't have any complications with Rick or Chatty.
It's the same, so it's the second Thursday.
Second Thursday.
Same as it's been.
The only item I had on here is we probably would want to pick between July and August. We usually get a month off, one of the two. I think we picked July last year and we had the August meeting, so I don't know if there's any interest in one of those months. Or if we can just put it on the books at this point and
You can put it on the books, and as you move closer, we could always file a cancellation notice. So whatever.
all right. I also noticed it's around all of the school breaks and everything, so that worked.
Yeah, I checked that as well.
That worked nicely.
I checked that.
So, any conflicts for anyone? Same time, same channel?
Yeah.
One more year? Okay. All right, so take a motion to approve the meeting schedule.
So,
Cliff? And second, Steve? All in favor? Okay. All right, so moving on to introduction to Goldman in New York. So I'll let Justin and Denise introduce themselves and we'll go from there.
Well, good evening, everyone. I've met Scott before. It's nice to meet everyone else. I am Denise Robidoux. I am the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for Goldman in New York. Don't let the title get to you. I just got it because I've been there so long. No. But I've worked with Goldman in New York, working with a number of communities on economic development at various stages. I work with small businesses. But to give you a little bit of background on myself, I have been a Connecticut small business owner for over 35 years. So I also ran shopping centers, so we had that discussion today, so I know a lot about small business retention and things like that. But Goldman in New York works with communities specifically for economic development initiatives. We also work with private developers when they are going before towns or looking to do a development within town. So we run the gamut, but please don't think that we are developers. We do not do any type of development whatsoever on our own behalf. So we're neutral in that respect. We are here to augment the town staff. In other words, your boards and commissions, Mika and his staff. We are here, just think of us as a third party to help you out. Okay, so you guys have been at this for a while now. I understand that. Some relatively newer to the commissions. But I think when we work with cities and towns, we kind of like to get to know them and to see where they want to go, what direction they're looking to be at. So I work a lot with our economic development commissions and working one-on-one with them, especially developing their mission and their vision and their goals that they have for their communities. So we're happy to help you out in any respect with that. Goldman New York has been in business, I should say, since 2011, but that doesn't mean I'm young anymore. So we all come from a variety of backgrounds. So you've got developers, you've got property owners, you've got small and large business owners, you've got planners that are among us, you've got financial. So think of our whole staff instead of hiring like a planner to help you out or to hire, a specific economic development person. You are getting a wide range of experience from our staff that is there on call for you whenever you need it. Okay? And I'll let Justin tell you a little bit.
So if I leave this here, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm Justin LaFountain. I am the Senior Vice President for Planning and Economic Development for Goldman, New York. I just started here relatively recently in July. Ever before that, I was a municipal planner for about a decade. I was most recently the planner for the town of Weathersfield. Before that, I was with the town of Bloomfield. And for a good 5-year chunk before that, I was with the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments, where I was sort of loaned out as a planner to multiple small towns, including Salem, Franklin, Stonington Borough, a wide variety. So, as Denise was mentioning, we do a lot of the planning and economic development side. That's sort of where I come in. I've been working with Mika and the Board of Selectmen in terms of their strategic plan and also the Planning and Zoning Commission for their strategies in terms of zoning rewrites and developments that come through and reviewing and that type of thing. So we're very excited to be here. We were thrilled to be assigned to Woodbridge, so we really look forward to working with you all.
Yeah. And for Woodbridge, Justin has been entrusted to be your lead and your contact. So whatever you need, please, you've got our business cards. Even if you just have a question or anything, feel free to pick up the phone and call us or shoot us an email. We're there if you have a question and there's something you're just not sure on. It doesn't only have to be at a meeting every month.
Right.
Okay, if you've got something that comes up before you and you need guidance on it, or you're just not sure, we're there to be your resource. Okay. So, any questions for us? We're looking at a number of different projects right now. I know Justin has been going to a lot of meetings here lately.
I was here last night.
So,
What did you think of the strategic plan from the Board of Selectmen?
So, strategic plan, that's a great question. I've started looking through it in terms of just a general overview. My next step is to make a draft for recommendations. In general, I think there are some areas for improvement. I think that there can be improvement both in terms of the larger scale goals, but also more importantly in the specific tasks that are laid out. Some of them are a bit too vague to be able to say. I always say this when we look at like a plan of conservation development or something, that the tasks need to be specific enough to where you can say, okay, that's done, let's check that off the list, as opposed to something that's a bit more broad and a bit more ambiguous. So what I will say is a very strong positive. I love that the Board of Selectmen uses that document to guide their agendas. I think that's a really useful tool, and it really helps propel the town. So I think it's just defining those and making sure that the town's going in the right direction.
One thing when we go into a community, it's important that we meet with the different boards and commissions. We'll go in and they'll bring all their boards and commissions in front of us, and we just have a good open discussion. And it's not something that's always done in every town. It's kind of like there's too many silos within town when you kind of have to look at that you are a working body for the community. And you may have a little bit different goals and what your roles are, but you're there for the good of the community and to make it better, no matter what your job is in town, whether you're a paid staff or whether you're on a board or commission, as a volunteer. So I think that's where we come in. We kind of I hate to use this word, but we try to corral everybody together. You're all on the same mission. So.
I know you've been involved with the POCD.
To some extent.
And Justin, you and I talked a little bit about POCD the other day. Where do you think you can help us there?
Sure. So a little bit of background on the POCD process. I'm going to start real general, just overview real quick. POCD, it's a 10-year document, Plan of Conservation Development, that sort of guides the town for the next 10 years. In Woodbridge's case, you've contracted with SLR to prepare that document for you. So we're not working on it specifically, but what we are doing is sort of interfacing with SLR to make sure it's being taken care of, and we're essentially acting as your town planner, you know, to make
Yeah.
sure that everything is being done properly, and SLR will do it properly, that this is no disparagement to them at all. So in terms of where EDC fits in with that, we wanna make sure that SLR is working with all the boards and commissions to make sure that everything is defined. You know, a lot of times in, you know, Woodbridge right now, there's a chapter in terms of economic development. You guys should be heavily involved with that. You should be reviewing it as it's being drafted, making sure that it's meeting up with your goals. You don't want a final document that is not in line with what this group is working towards. You know,
Right.
it's that same thing that Denise was saying in terms of making sure everybody's on the same page. If a plan is prepared that Planning and Zoning and Board of Selectmen approve, that EDC is saying, well, hold on, that's not quite right.
Right.
So that's where we come in to make sure that that's being filtered around and distributed and whatnot. My understanding from SLR is they're gonna be having some focus groups and working sessions in the next few months. I think
January.
Starting December, January. So that's when I'm imagining this group will be involved.
Yeah, it's very important that you get involved with it.
So to that, agreed. I certainly agree, and I think SLR did the previous one. I think they were Malone and
Milo and McBurn.
Boom at that point, and Woodbridge hasn't done a lot of POCDs. We were late to that party. You know, I just, one of the things I'd love to get your take on right now is because we've got sort of a traditional late to the party POCD in this commissioner's opinion, the vision's going to be put forth before the committees weigh in. And Connecticut has made, in my opinion, strides towards a different kind of POCD as well as the SCROG. And I don't see, and I don't know yet if that's going to happen in that vision, but I think that comes at that stage. I'd love to get your reaction to that sort of statement. Or are we going to deal with a housing section that's isolated in a silo that's more of a demographic section? Are we going to deal with a village district economic section that really doesn't talk about vibrancy and what the village, if there is a village, you know, I want to talk about that later tonight as a group. But what, you know, if we don't weigh in on the vision stage, then we're going to be faced with making small tweaks to what some might say. They moved it to see, you know, sustainable, you know, some POCD plans don't say POCD anymore. You know, they're sustainable Woodbridge. How do we sustain ourselves?
Right.
As opposed to traditional, you know where I'm going?
I totally know where you're going, and
Okay.
it's interesting that you bring it up because I was just having a conversation the other day about this very topic. Essentially what you have in the state are, well, there's really three different types, but
Yeah.
we'll focus on two different types of POCs right now. One is sort of the analytical side, which is what you're talking, where it's just chapter, you know, it's all broken apart and siloed into, you know, a variety of things. And then you have a more thematic plan of conservation development that takes everything into account and it really produces a goal and vision for the town, and it puts all of those sections, housing, economic development, sustainability, natural resources, everything putting together to meet that common goal. So in terms of where it's going, you know, I can't speak to SLR's final product because they're still in the, you know, production phase of it. I don't know exactly where that's gonna go, but we will try to work with them to make it a more thematic product. You know, we find that works better. It's a product that you can finally say, you know, here's where we're trying to go and here's the steps to get there in each of those different areas. It becomes a lot more user-friendly, and a lot of times what we see is, you know, people develop these plans and they sit on a shelf for years. No one even knows they're there, no one reads them, no one looks at them. When we're involved, we like it to be a plan that is.
It should be a working document for you that everybody refers back to, you know. Not that it has to follow, you know, exactly, but is this in line what's in the POCD?
Right.
In other words, an initiative that you're working on, well, what's the POCD say to that? And to be able to go look at that. Is there a full POCD rewrite, or is it just an update?
It's sort of just the SLR product,
Okay.
yeah.
They're still waiting for inputs from all the boards and commissions.
Okay.
I thought that was December though.
Well, I mean, it's due.
And the vision was going to be before that,
It was
no?
due 12/31, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So, the conversation I have had is the direction is to sort of take what was in 2015, and then add, delete, modify. Okay, so it really is starting from that base
So it's taking the 2015 and just updating
and updating it.
Okay.
That
Which
literally
is
was
now
so
10 years old.
right. So I mean, I don't want to get critical because it's not our
Right.
area, right? We're being asked to deliver.
But you should have input and should have
Well,
comments.
and they're asking for input,
Yeah.
but it's really starting with that as the base, and then what do we change and modify?
And that's why I'm
And I have
asking
this
our
on the
planner.
agenda tonight, so like I.
Right.
Yeah, we're just hopping around on it.
Yeah.
A little bit.
So I guess the question is, if there is a change coming to that, should we go down that road? I mean, you have a line of sight that I think we don't have right now with the process, right?
So the most I can say is that, we're still sort of gearing up in Woodbridge at this point. It's one of those things where the SLR contract it was signed before we came on board.
Right.
So we can't change anything to it. Depending on what was put into that contract, it's, that's up to the town to decide. But again, what we can do is encourage that those steps be taken. Because it's really an important document. It's, a lot of people pan it and it's, okay, well, we just need to do it to fulfill the state requirements. But like Denise was saying, it should really be something that's similar to the way the Board of Selectmen uses the strategic plan to really inform all of the decisions that are being made in town.
And those two documents should be speaking to each other.
Oh, they should parallel each other,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
So,
As should your mission and vision for the economic development mission.
so what we can do is we can take a look at the contract that POCD is being prepared under to see if there's any wiggle room to determine what we're doing.
Right.
That would be a next step for us.
Yeah, that would have to go through me.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Did you have a comment?
I just think that's more important to do that now, to talk about that step. My comment, I don't know, and we'll take this up, and while we have you here, I think it's helpful to ask these questions, though we're skipping around on the agenda a bit, because I'm sure you don't want to stay for the whole meeting.
It depends on how long your meeting is. 3 hours. No, but this is what I did with your agenda today.
Yeah.
We're happy to talk about all
We're
that.
happy to talk about
Well, one of
all
my
it.
comments, and I
Yes,
don't know if
that's
that
great.
comment, when we talked about the strategic plan, and, I think there's a couple of elephants that are in our rooms and in each of our commissions that aren't actually sitting in our rooms right now. But I think there's some really hot topics for our town to deal with. And, for instance, in our strategic plan, we don't have a housing section.
Yep.
And housing is discussed in various forms and ways that may be, in some respect, not the way we'd want to phrase that.
Does that mean the Board of Selectmen plan?
The strategic plan, right, the
Okay.
Board of Selectmen. And so saying that the strategic plan and the POCD need to align themselves, for me, is troubling. And so I think, yes, they maybe should align, but then they both need the same change.
Oh, absolutely. And just
And,
so you
yeah.
know, when I was reviewing, essentially the strategic plan has 3 overarching goals. My recommendation so far is we need to expand it into more goals to include things like housing, specific economic development, because right now it's sort of in a collage of other things. And then government services, which is also just sort of combined. So it really needs to be broken down into those areas. So I wholeheartedly agree with you, yes.
Okay, yeah, and so I think, right, good, that makes me feel better.
Okay. So, the POCD is obviously a hot topic right now, just given the timing and where we need to be. But, one of the things I was hopeful, and Justin, we've talked about this a little bit, is that we have a lot happening right now as an EDC, right? But I think the thing that we're missing and we're trying to get to is more of a vision and strategy from an economic development standpoint, right? To help us filter opportunities, right? Things like specific clusters in town, and so how can you help us with that?
Yeah, so that's something that we've worked on with multiple municipalities, is putting together a vision for this group. So, Denise was mentioning earlier, we looked earlier today at the, in the charter for the EDC.
Right.
It's very vague. It's very short.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's something that, you know, this group can take on in terms of creating more of a, what's driving this group?
Yeah, it needs
Where
more,
do you wanna go?
it needs more meat to what your mission statement is and what you wanna accomplish. And I don't mean that you're gonna put in 10 different goals within
Right.
there. Most of them that I've worked on with communities have 3 to 5 goals that they focus on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm working with one that we did their mission and vision statement 2 years ago, and we're actually updating it
Right.
because they've completed 2 out of their, you know, their goals. So we have to either, we're deleting those, but we're adding in something new to it.
Mhm.
So it's gonna be a moving target over the years, but look at it as to where you are now and what you wanna focus on right now.
Right.
You know, is it that your, you know, yours talks about industrial, what was the other one in it? Business, sorry.
Business and industrial.
Which industrial is business, but,
Right.
you know, you talked about housing and it's not reflective of housing, but, you know, Don's famous statement that you brought up before is, you know, housing is where the people that work in the businesses go at night, you know? So, you know, it's gotta be reflective of what you wanna focus on. If that means that you maybe have to make an addendum to
Mhm.
broaden that industrial and business, you may have to do that, but you have your base in there right now.
And, you know, I also think, to respond to that is that vague may be the word, or broad may be a different word. I don't know if you'd see it as broad or vague. But I think leadership comes, and then sort of positions, you know, the framework around leadership comes. That's been my experience in business, is that leaders, you know, stand forward, do what's the right economic development, and they may have charges that we're dealing with a past, you know, that didn't work. And so to continue down a path of a charge that doesn't apply today
Right.
in a modern group, you know, that's where leadership comes forward.
Right.
And so I would push back a little bit on you to say that we should be focusing on adding that now. The leadership will add that. You know, leadership and strength and doing the right thing will add that
Right.
for a town, not fighting about who's got turf. And that's been my experience in a high performing.
Yeah, and I don't think it's about turf wars at all.
Right, right.
It's-
But so that's what I'm
it's-
saying is
it's-
let's lead
it-
by what's right. Yeah.
Right. You know,
That's right.
what I see more is that you need something that's driving the work that you're doing.
Mhm.
And that's what a mission and, you know, or a vision statement and goals is gonna do. It's what this committee is meeting every month for and what they want to accomplish.
Right.
You know, I have one town that I'm working with and it's like pulling teeth. All they wanna talk about is wayfinding signage.
Mhm.
And last,
Which a year ago, like I was telling you, that was the hot topic.
well, they
Now
decided.
you look at our
yeah.
agenda, it is a little deeper than.
They decided they wanted to put signs up that point them to the businesses in their town center. The only problem is they don't have a town center.
You know, to our credit, we're seeing, I'm going on the different seminars and groups that we're attending to become educated,
Right.
to become good. You know, I'm a retiree, so I got nothing
Yeah.
to do but all day long do this
That's-
stuff. But I'm seeing all other members now of the EDC, and I'm saying, oh well, look, you know. So I think, you know, you've got an EDC that's
Yeah.
attending the various presentations, and we're learning from whether it's Justin or from Dale
Yeah.
or from SLR, and we're listening and learning, and you know, hopefully, you know, come from that
Do you-
mindset.
Do you have a membership with like IEDC, the International Economic? Because they run programs, but they also run webinars and stuff that you can take part in.
Right.
And that's really good. We just, we had 4 of our people that went out to the conference that was out in Denver.
Mhm.
You know, so we're looking to keep up on that stuff and know what's going on. Justin keeps up on it all the time. I'm more boots on the ground, with people and dealing with people and dealing with small businesses, because that's my forte. So I think that's good for you guys. Any type of education that you can get to see, because like I said, we don't wanna silo, we wanna know what's going on, how to make it better,
Mhm.
with what you're doing.
And a couple things I wanna add. First of all, I love what you said, that this is an active group, because that is so important. We often see people
Oh my
who,
God.
you know, they come in, they listen, they don't say anything, they leave, and they don't think about this for the next month.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so important to have an active role, which is fantastic that you have that. The other thing I wanted to say is, you know, in terms of creating these, you know, the mission statement vision, these, you mentioned it's a moving target. It should be a moving target.
Yeah.
Because like you mentioned, you know, wayfinding signage isn't as big a place on here now. You know, things change over time for various reasons. You may find out that something that you had been looking at, well, maybe it's not as feasible or as prudent as you thought it might be, so it, you know, gets moved to the side. Or something new may come up that hasn't been thought about before. Maybe there's a potential for a new development in town that, oh boy, we could do something here. You know, that's where we talk a lot, you know, planning about, you know, having plannings that are living documents, things that are constantly being brought back, constantly updated, and that's really the goal here.
Mhm.
So,
And I don't think it's wrong that if you have like a new development or something that is going on in town, that you ask them to come before your commission and present about what they're doing.
Right.
Because they may give you a totally different presentation than they are gonna present to planning and zoning, which is a more technical,
Mhm.
aspect
You're
presentation.
talking about housing development,
Anything, any type of development.
business, restaurants, okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I deal with a lot of businesses that wanna come into different communities, and I will take them through the community. We do business visitations with some communities where, a member of our group will go out with the head of EDC, and they will go out with, you know, the mayor or the first selectman or whatever, and go in and say, what do you need from us? You know, you've got 50 employees in this town, or you've got 800 employees in this town. What are you looking for your business and for your employees?
Right.
It opens up the dialogue,
and,
you know.
and just as importantly, are you happy?
Yeah,
Right,
Because-
so we're
Yeah.
wading into those conversations right now. We're gonna have a formal business retention subcommittee that will get going, right? And I kind of look at some of these, like, you know, business attraction, when we have something to attract businesses to, like, I think that will become a
Yeah.
thing, like, and there's a lot to come, I think,
Yeah.
in Woodbridge, right? So, but I think it would be helpful, you know, when we met back in April, right, when we were first talking, you had, you know, a 5-step planning process that
Yeah.
really, when I reviewed it, I thought it spoke to where we are. Like, we're moving on a lot of things,
Yeah.
right? There's a business district redevelopment that's been going on, you know, been talked about and thought about for quite a bit, right? That's moving down the road. We have, you know, our country club, obviously, former country club is another big opportunity, and we're kind of reacting to these things as they come up versus having something to connect our activity to.
Right.
The other thing that I really like is that we have a very engaged EDC. Like I was telling you, we would never quorum this time a year ago. And we also have a ton of resource. I mean, between you, we're gonna talk about Connecticut Main Street Center a little bit later, Dale, I mean, I feel like Cooper Robertson, who will be coming in on the country club side, like, there's a ton, right? And now how do we kind of direct those things towards something?
Common goal.
Right.
Yeah.
But I know when we had first talked, you know, it was kind of like getting the assessment of where are we today,
yes.
right? And then where do we want to be?
Right.
I don't feel
And then
like,
how do you get there?
well, right.
Okay,
That's-
so
that's-
there's a
that's-
5-step process that we always work with. And the
Right.
first one is basically, where are we today? What's the condition
Mhm.
of what we have right now, right here? And
Right.
I think we're in kind of looking at that stage right now for Woodbridge. That's why we're addressing different committees, we're meeting. We're also meeting with your consultants for the POCD. We met with Cooper Robertson, you know,
I'm meeting with the housing committee in
Right.
December. You know,
so there's all these pulling together, saying, okay, you've got like every town, you have a number of boards and commissions,
Mhm.
okay? I think every town probably has 50 more than they really need, but I went to a town that is as small as yours, and they had 47 commissions,
Right.
okay? So what's getting redundant is it stopping work from going on.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're in that assessment phase right now, and we're helping where we can. And it's important that we're able to pick up the phone and call SLR, because we know those people. We've set up meetings with Cooper Robertson to see what they're looking at. Because we don't want a POCD to come out or a report to come out from one of them that we're gonna be counteracted to, or
Right.
your town is gonna say, wait a minute, that's not what we want.
Mhm.
So that's where I talk about looking at the goals and the visions
Right.
that you're aligning. Doesn't have to be exactly the same, because P and Z is not gonna look at something the same way you're looking at it,
Mhm.
okay?
Nor should they.
Right.
They should be looking at it.
What was helpful, my conversation that I had about the POCD, with Chris Sullivan, was that there are opportunities to amend it.
Yes.
Right? It's not like
Yes.
here we are in 2025, right, and it cannot be altered for the next 10 years.
And a couple of good things to note about that. First of all, to be a living plan, it should be regularly
Mhm.
looked at, not just every 10 years. But fun little fact too, you're required by the state to update it every 10 years. If you do an amendment to it in year 2, you get another 10 years after that.
Right.
So you
Right.
kind of continue a time frame.
Okay.
And that's, we tell a lot of our communities that's what you should be doing. It's for a variety of reasons, other things come up, people get busy, money becomes an issue, it turns into not as idealistic as it could be, but it's still important to be reviewing that.
Right.
And the fact that this commission is so active tells me that that might be an opportunity here.
Mhm.
I'd love to get your thoughts on Chris Sullivan's comment. One of the things, we have a combined planning and zoning. And that may be, I'm thinking, and I'd love to get your reaction, but I was wondering if as a living document, you can amend your planning, your plan of conservation and development, or your sustainable Woodbridge plan. And you can amend it, but when you have a combined and the inherent transactional conflict of having a planning and zoning, you know where I'm going with this. I'm wondering if that comment is not as relevant. While it's said that you can make those plans, it's generally the POCD is made in relation to a zoning change, and it's a zoning transaction that may necessitate a POCD change rather than a proactive planning stage. And so that one of the things I'm concerned, or I would love to get an opinion from a professional, is what does that comment say? Is it saying that happens, or is it really saying in a town like ours where you have a combined and it's transactional? Like, for instance, the city of New Haven or something would have a planning department, and they would have, and so it's a whole different animal for changing your plan as a living document, whereas ours. So
Land use.
Yeah, so a few thoughts on that. The
Yeah.
first thing is, you're right. When POCDs get updated in between time, it's almost entirely to accommodate some sort of
Some
development.
transactional zoning change.
Exactly. That shouldn't be the case, but in practice, that historically has been the case. Most towns in the state at this point have a combined planning and zoning commission. There still are some that have separate. There have actually been a few towns recently that merged. I think Groton merged. There were a few others recently in the past
And
5 or
then
6
if you
years.
look at, like, Bloomfield is their land use and economic development, and they just folded the building department into theirs.
Right. Yeah, then there's the whole
Okay.
departmental side of things.
Yeah,
In terms of the commission
the
side
commission
of things,
itself, right.
it's it gets dicey because you have two inherently different functions per state statutes that are not opposed to each other, but you have one that's the reaction side and one that's the planning and progressive side. So, the planning side should really be doing the long-term planning, the POCDs. I was just having this conversation with somebody, but in one of the towns, I was saying that, the zoning commission only deals with the applications, and that's true, but you have to remember you're also a planning commission. And what I've tried to convince communities to do, and some have followed through, sort of divide up the agenda, or in some cases, and I know this gets a little bit controversial, where you have a once meeting a month, do it twice a month, have a planning meeting, and have a zoning meeting. Same group of people, but you're focused on different things, you're wearing different hats.
Conservation and then wetlands.
Exactly.
They run them separate in Fairfield. Right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I totally get where you're going with this, and
Yeah.
it ends
Or
up-
how do we deal with it when our planner is working with the first selectman right now, but, is it, should you be really sitting with the TPC? Well, there's the conflict issue. So, or should you be working with the EDC folks, or the sort of the sustainable folks?
Right.
They're sort of saying, how do we sustain ourselves as a future for our town?
Right.
25 years ago, we'll be dead, but, well, I'll be dead. But
I hope
none
not.
of you guys will survive. I'll be gone.
I don't know.
Yeah,
however
so
long.
I hope
On
not.
that note, motion to.
Sorry
I
about
only got 25 years left. I'm going home.
Right.
that. Well, I do.
I got things to do. See,
Cliff's like, good.
So anyway,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, our contract runs through the first selectman's office, so
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
Inherently, that's who we report to.
Right.
But, he does recognize that I will work with the Planning and Zoning Commission on various things, and, it's something where I feel it's important, and it was when I worked for the town of Bloomfield before I worked with Bowman in York, I was able to convince them, because they were able to meet twice a month sometimes, to take on that different role. Think a little bit different. Quite honestly, the planning side's the more fun side. You're not just responding to applications that come in. I don't want to get too far into the
No,
planning
and
side,
I think we've also convinced many of our communities that, that they have to be proactive with any type of development that wants to come in or whatever, and to have that open dialogue before they're going to a planning and zoning commission or anything like that. You want to meet with the developers, see what they want, and you can be honest with them in that respect, saying, well, I don't know if that quite meets where our vision is going right now. But if you did this, it might work around. So you're taking on a proactive role versus a reactive role.
I'd like to
Yeah.
tag on that if I can. Denise, do you have any advice for us in terms of setting short-term and intermediate goals? We're getting started, we have a lot that's going on.
Yeah.
How do we do this over the course of the next 60 days, next 90 days?
Okay, whenever we work with the town, especially if we're doing master plans with communities, which we're working on quite a few right now for downtowns and stuff, we always look at setting short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals.
Excellent.
Because what you are doing, you look at the long-term goals, those are affecting your town for the generations that are coming, okay? And they're expanding. We know with COVID that we have to have short-term goals that may have to be turned over. Okay, I worked with 30 communities in Massachusetts doing downtown planning, specifically for COVID recovery, and what could they do to make their downtowns better? Whether it was designing a pocket park or it was helping the small businesses, anything, to enacting, roadway changes that had to be made, infrastructure, anything like that. So yeah, you do have to say, what do we want to accomplish short term, and define those, and we can help you do that.
Okay.
Okay. But know that ultimately those short term and midterm goals are leading up to those long term and fixing that. In other words, you all know you have a streetscape project that's going on. You had to go step by step to get that. You had to decide that you wanted to go for a grant. You had to go out to people who could design it the right way, and then you have to build it. Think of those as short, mid, and long term. What's the end effect that you want to reach?
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question for you all, if I could. What has been the experience of sort of this group in interacting with the other commissions? Is there a cohesive blend? Is there ever any interaction with planning and zoning or housing or wetlands conservation? What's the interface like?
Do you all want to go first? Sure.
I'm brand new.
Sure.
This is my third meeting, so I'm not really sure. I haven't
So she's
talked to
like,
anybody.
do what you want.
I'm like, figure out, yeah, I'm okay with it.
Right, Cliff, do you have
I think that the amount of interaction that we've had since this commission has formed has been little, if any. However, there is information being shared through the different roles that the different commissions are playing. Are we all talking to each other all the time? Do we need to? I don't know. But to your point, there's certainly a way that we have to bring everything together to come to a, you know, a goal that's gonna work best for the town.
Are they gonna do a boards and commissions, weren't they?
I think it was being discussed at the
Okay,
board.
I know that's one of the things that we were discussing is to bring all the boards and commissions
I
in.
thought that was next month.
Yeah, and the dates might have gotten moved around a bit.
There's no date on
Yeah,
the books or anything.
yeah, so,
I look at Tony and Tony's.
and that's, no,
It became a holiday
don't do
party,
that,
right?
you mean with the
Right.
holidays, yeah. No, but I think that's important, even for you to be able to say, I have a question for somebody in planning, to be able to pick up and say, or, hey, I saw this new project has been proposed, can you tell me a little bit about it? To be able to have that open dialogue between the commissions and the boards, I think is important, especially with economic development, you know?
And let me give the reason sort of why I was asking. So some of the work that I've been doing so far is reviewing your zoning regulations to see where things stand, you know, what could be improved. There's, as with any town, so I don't say this as a slight to Woodbridge, there's a lot of room for improvement there. There always is in zoning regulations. That being the case, if I'm looking at, say, the business and commercial zones and even the housing regulations, things like that, this type of commission should be weighing in on that. You know what I mean? You should be involved in those, because something that, you know, I look at from an outsider's perspective and the planning and zoning look at and says, okay, well, that makes sense from a planning perspective. This commission might say, well, hang on, we know something that you don't in terms of the economic nature of the town. So this group should be involved. So I think, again, sort of what we were saying before, it really needs to be blended together, and I think that's something we can help you work towards. So.
Yeah, when he's looking at, and, you know, zoning regulations, we have, actually, it's gonna be trademarked, our phrase. It's, swift, simple, and certain, okay? You shouldn't make it hard for a business or a developer to come into your town and to understand, or to have to go and spend loads of money and go through, I'm not even gonna say months, but years of process. We were meeting with actually two people from North Carolina. They sat on a panel for Hartford Business Journal, and they used to be in Connecticut. They're now in North Carolina. We're talking huge developments, not huge developments, but developments that can go through, or businesses that can open, things that can get that done, that are at the most a 4-month process. We're in Connecticut,
4 years.
4 years,
is what they say.
yeah. Okay.
For like a 200-unit housing
Yeah.
development.
So what we mean by swift, simple, it's the simple is it's easy for people to understand. If that's not allowed in your town, it's not allowed. I can go to your regulations, I can look at that and say, it's not for what they want,
And I don't need an attorney to,
Yeah.
to
Right.
interpret it for me.
okay? So, you make it easy for people to understand what your goals are for your community. And I think as Justin reviews it, that's what he's looking at.
Makes sense.
Just to follow up on looking at the zoning, SLR, when they were making their pitch to redo the POCD, they were asked a couple of questions, but one of the questions was, you know, in the placemaking down in our business district, they were, you know, asked a question, and they said, well, if you really wanted to really, you know, start to think about doing that, you might want to set up some sort of development agency, some MDA. And then, you know, the state has other resources right now with an MRDA, right? And they will come in and, you know, at least I'm attending a lot of seminars, and we'll see the guy that's running those, you know, to talk about, you know, what they can do for us in that review. I'd love to get your take on, though, that comment from SLR, or what the state offers on MRDA, and what you're doing as a review. I sort of see 3 levels of sort of, you know, and I'm wondering, do we need a new localism? You know, do we need a new kind of localism because the old's not working, but then again, you don't want the state, because we saw some of that pushback with the Brownfield grant. And I'm just saying, you know, how do we get this new localism going for the productive, sustainable Woodbridge for the future?
Right. You know, it's a deep question that I won't be able to answer fully right now, only because there are many levels to it. But that said, there are different benefits to all of these things. You know, when I'm looking at the zoning regulations, I'm looking at things like you know, on the west side of, you know, Amity, it requires a special permit and a public hearing to open a restaurant. that's excessive. There are already restaurants there. You know, it should be something that's easier to interpret. In terms of the placemaking, then we get into a little bit of a different category there, because then we get into design guidelines and different sorts of you know, public amenities that take place. You know, sidewalks, public lighting, public seating, public art, perhaps. You know, different variety of things. So I would need to take a more specific look and see, you know, what is the town right away? What are the areas for these types of things? Do you need more space to be able to implement these? Is it something where, you know, right now it's just underutilized space, unactivated space that needs to be brought up to speed? Or if it's something where, you know, we really don't have the space to do what we want, and we need to somehow widen that.
Yeah.
So it's a question that, like I said, SLR's answer may be correct in some cases. I hate to jump to that point because it's not, it becomes a little bit more complex and time consuming than it might otherwise be.
Lack of capacity, right,
Exactly.
Yeah, you
infrastructure.
did mention the development agency, right?
Yeah, and MRDA, right.
Well, no, also if your
Yeah,
town
an
had a
MDA,
development agency. We have set those up with communities. There's a specific state process that has to be followed to do those. We did it with Bloomfield because it just makes you be able to be a little more reactionary to things as a town body. So, and yeah, Emma, we've worked a lot with CRDA, which is, MRDA is kind of, CRDA works around the Hartford region. Mike Frumuth runs that.
Right.
Now you're talking, the MRDA is going to encompass the rest of the towns, okay? And there's 169 towns in Connecticut. Okay, they have specific focus that they're gonna be looking at as the MRDA.
It's actually, Don and I were just talking last week to David Corris, who runs MRDA.
Right,
So,
right.
you know, we're heavily involved with, you know, all those things.
We've had David speak at different events, you know, throughout the state, whether it's for business
Right.
or,
I think he's gonna be at the Brownfield one.
yeah.
You know, it will be good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess in terms of next steps and working together, first of all, anybody else have any? I really think like this process of kind of establishing where we are and where do we want to be, right? I think it would be a helpful exercise
Yep.
for this group. My challenge is you've heard a lot of things. There's a Board of Selectmen strategic plan, there's a POCD, and now we're gonna come sailing in, right? So how do we ultimately blend that into those things while taking the steps to do, you know, get grounded in, you know, what are Woodbridge limitations and then or the advantages, right? And then moving to where do we wanna be, you know, assessing the various business sectors that we have in town and starting to formulate something that we can.
Yeah, so thoughts right off the top of my head, and Denise, feel free to jump in too, but what, you know, the work I've been doing so far in reviewing the strategic plan, reviewing the zoning regulations, reviewing sort of the current aspect of the town right now. We've also, as a side note, we have like a data analytics team. They've been looking into some of the,
I'm sorry. None of this is recorded. Awesome.
we gotta do it all again.
Okay, start again.
So we have a data analytics team that's been looking into some of the demographics, the different trends, you know, in population and housing and things like that. So, you know, what I'm thinking right now might make sense is to put all of that analysis together in sort of a presentation for potentially this group. Maybe it's a combined group, depending on what, you know, the first selectman is looking for.
I think if we could get all the boards and commissions together,
Yeah.
and either you or Don does the we did it, that's exactly the presentation we did with Middlefield, we've done it with Bloomfield, we've done it with, you know, a number of other communities. That's the kind of where you are, who you are. Look, you know, it's great to look at a set of demographics, say that comes off of advanced CT, and you have this many people that live there, the average person makes this. What our team goes into is more of a trends, okay? And they'll look at what is your trends over the last, you know, 10 to 20 years. Where are you going? I will say that you guys are an anomaly because your schools are actually growing in Connecticut instead of contracting. You know, so that is something that has to be looked at. Why? you know, you've got more families that are moving into your area, you know, so that all comes into school capacity and things like that. So there's a number of things you can learn off of the analytics that our team would pull.
Right.
And then as we sort of put that together, then we shift gears during that presentation to be more of a visioning session to
Yeah.
say, okay, now you know exactly, you know, as best as can be determined where we are. Based on that information, where are you looking to go? And that gets to your point about what are the short, medium, and long-term goals.
Right.
You know, and one of the things that we stress with the communities we work with is it has to be realistic. You know, you have to look at something and say, this is the goal that we can accomplish in, just say, a year. If you start adding too many things onto it, a couple of bad things happen. One, groups get burnt out. Two, from a PR standpoint, it doesn't look good because, you know, you're saying you're gonna work on things and it just doesn't happen.
Right.
And then three, the tasks that can get accomplished tend to get pushed to the side because you see this one goal that's, you know, everybody wants to get done, but that tends to be a more difficult task where you could be working your way towards that. So it's a bit of a multi-step process, but I think that's where the next steps
Yeah.
might be.
I mean, there's so many times when we're looking at communities, there may be 5 things that you're leading up to, but you're working on 2 here, or you're adding another one into it as it's going along. So you could have potentially 3-4 things going on at once that are going there to meet your end goal, you know.
And I sorry.
No, no, no.
It sounded like you were gonna say
I
something.
was, but I do a lot of talking.
I heard the big inhale, and it was
I know, I thought you were gonna, that's what I did.
I was gonna say, I have another question for you guys,
Yeah.
and that's, what do you want us to leave knowing? You know, what do you want us to know about your goals, and what do you want us to know about where you would like to see the town? Nothing, I guess. All right, we're good. We're good.
Okay, go. Our job is done tonight.
While everybody thinks I could ask my question, and then while everybody's thinking of answering that question, is this, you know, and I don't want to criticize past EDCs because that's what the new EDC does, right? They criticize what the past people does,
They all
right?
do.
I mean,
Don't worry about
everybody
it.
does that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we did that we all do it in our whole careers, right? But the point is it valuable for us, or is it just my personality, to want to take a 50,000-foot view and really sort of understand the whole thing, how it fits together? But is that valuable that we just continue not trying to grab too many projects, but understanding the whole sort of, the parable of the elephant, right? You know, depending upon what part of the elephant you hold, understand, you know, working these, and there was this planner in Fairfield that I'm enamored with, and because he seemed to have really developed this over the years of being there, but it took him 20 years, and he collects data now, he's got answers, and the new EDC comes in, gets the benefit of his data collection. You know, I'm wondering if that's not could that be, you know, and then if we all get good at what we know, then, and we learn, then we become ambassadors within those other areas because it's all gonna fit together and sustain it. Is that one thing we can do, is, you know, just be, because that's great, because then I can stay on my computer all day long and study, but, you know, not actually do I have to do anything. But I just wondered if that was something.
Yeah. No, I think that.
I think there's some amazing ways to collect data.
Yeah.
One of the things I think that we utilize a lot is the geofencing, to understand who's in our community, who's coming into our communities, who's leaving our communities.
right.
You know, we just, we're working on a town center redevelopment plan. And we actually picked 3 of the restaurants in town to see who was going to them, how long they were staying there, where they were coming from, the diverse makeup of the people that were going there, because it's a very diverse community. And all 3 restaurants were coming from different areas and but to look at them, you would think they would be drawing the same type of people, okay? where one was extremely local in where they were drawing from. One was drawing from a further out and higher end and more diverse background. You know, so utilizing information and gathering information like that. You know, you just don't want to be the community where everybody is driving through and not stopping.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want to give them a reason, especially if you want to have a downtown area or, you know, a town center area, that people have a reason to stop there and to stop in your community.
Mhm.
And they're moving to your community for a reason. We know that with your schools growing, okay? But you have to have a reason to keep them here. You know, are they, you know, leaving to go to Milford for dinner? Are they leaving to go to New Haven for dinner?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and why? You know,
Right. Well, I think you've hit on one of the bigger challenges that Woodbridge has.
Yeah.
Okay, in that when you look up the highway and down the highway from us, right, is one of everything you need, right? Two or more, right?
Yeah.
So to establish a thriving business community in Woodbridge, right?
Yeah.
We've got to have something unique, and that's where, when I kind of look at this process of what is that going to be, right? And I think a lot of us look at like from a retail lens. Okay, well, given the retail that is around us, right? Are we trying to?
You're not going to.
Are we trying to pick a fight that we're never going to win?
Right.
Right, and we want to have a downtown, you know, a business district that, you know, provides amenities for the residents, but
Right.
quite frankly, is it going to put a dent in the grand list?
Right.
Yeah.
Probably not.
No.
Okay, but it provides a lot of other benefits for the town.
Right.
But is there another sector that we could go after, thinking outside of retail, where?
And retail isn't the retail that it was 20 years ago.
No.
Okay, you would never think of putting a financial office in the middle of a retail center years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Retail centers have been more of especially community centers have turned into service oriented for your community. What's easier? Can I grab a coffee? You know, can I stop at my bank, or can I go to my financial advisor? Can I go to the dentist or the doctor or the walk-in?
Mm-hmm.
You know, years ago you wouldn't have seen a medical office in a shopping center. You
Right.
see those all the time now, spas, that. So I think people have to change their vision of what, you know, retail is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what you're looking at is more of an amenity-rich retail center for your community.
Right.
You know, they can drive where they want to go shopping. They can go to, you know, BJ's. You're not going to get something like that, or a Costco or whatever here.
Right.
So you've got to think. You've got a Starbucks that does fabulous here. Okay, that draws. That's probably one of the ones we should focus on to see where
Yeah.
they're coming from.
Mhm.
I know they're dropping off the highway there, but you know, but look at some of your, you know, why are people coming? Why are places successful
Mhm.
when other places aren't?
Right.
And if people are stopping, how can we keep them here a little
Yeah.
bit longer?
Right.
Sorry.
Justin, I think, you know, one thing that comes to mind, the underpinning to all this is that this town has extreme reliance upon the residential taxpayer. And we have to figure out how to expand that,
94% of your tax
Mm-hmm.
just an
taxes are
extreme,
drawn from
extreme
residential taxes.
percentage.
Right.
And we have to solve that. And to me, that is the one thing that I'm hopeful that you're aware of now, and that you take with you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, Woodbridge is I think it's the 6th highest mill rate in the state.
Right.
It's very high taxes, and that's why, because
Yeah.
it's entirely put on the
Yeah, you-
backs of the residents.
You're only 6% commercial and industrial
Right.
tax base.
So,
Where I have communities that I'm working with that are 50-50,
Wow.
you know,
and that,
so.
it will never be that way.
No, it won't. It
But,
can't.
but it could be, you know.
Yeah,
tried to-
you could boost that 6% up a little. That would help your taxpayers,
Right.
you know.
Right, but there are different paths that you could get there.
Right.
Okay, we could increase the population by 50%, and then you would have a different look, right?
Right.
Does
You
the
want-
town want that?
What is your character, your
Okay.
community? You have to
So
consider that.
there are the trade-offs, right? There's tax relief versus, are you ready for the change, right? Whatever that may be, okay?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that we, as a town,
Yeah, I
struggle.
don't, like Justin said, I don't think you're ever striving to jump that number up. You're just looking to increase it probably a little bit to take a little bit of the residential
Mhm.
tax burden off.
Mhm.
You know, and that's why when you're looking at economic development, you have to look at it purposefully,
right,
you know, and doing that the right way.
One of the activities we like to do when we do like a big workshop session is it's called a continuum of change. And basically it looks like a timeline, but it says, you know, you want, being very simplified with it, you know, more development or less development, and the middle is the same. And you put a dot, and then we can see where exactly the things are going. And what it tells us is the risk appetite for the town. You know,
Mhm.
what are you willing to tolerate? Are you looking for more development, or is it gonna be an uphill battle because the vast majority of people are saying, we want even less development? You know,
Mhm.
it gets into some tricky situations, but lately what we've been finding is some answers that kind of surprise us.
Yes.
One of the things that surprised us quite a bit is there is a higher appetite for quote-unquote affordable housing than there is for quote-unquote multifamily housing, by a significant amount. Normally when people, you know, historically have heard affordable housing.
I'm
people-
sorry, could you say that again?
So we ask two different questions. Are you looking for more or less or the same amount of affordable housing, more or less or the same multifamily, so market rate multifamily? More people have said they're looking for more affordable housing than they are for market rate multifamily housing.
Yeah. And I think what, you know,
So is that affordable single family?
now it's,
Or-
it runs the gamut, but I think what a lot of people don't understand is affordable housing isn't the old Section 8 housing, okay?
Mhm.
It's your workforce housing. It's for your teachers that are just coming out of school and want to move into the area. It's for your police and firefighters that, you know, are just coming onto the job and they're not at that top tier pay, you know, or they're kids that are, you know, working in New Haven, but they're paying off their student loans,
Mhm.
okay? So there's those various levels. I think communities lately seem to have a better appetite for when you say workforce housing versus affordable housing. It's
Right.
the same thing, but it, you know, you have to be able to, you know, support those kids. We wanna keep them here
Right.
in New England. We don't want them, you know, going to school and just leaving,
Mhm.
you know, cause that in the long run, I mean, we know it's doing that now. It's contracting in our school age children, our, you know, everybody. You know, people are downsizing their homes, and you wanna keep those people that are downsizing their homes within your community if you can, and
Right.
provide those opportunities for them, you know. So
Okay.
that's market rate and
Got it.
too.
Anything else from anyone? So what would you suggest, like, next steps in moving on this, the process?
Yeah, so I think the next steps for us will be, let me have a recap with Mika, tell her
Okay.
what we discussed tonight,
Yeah.
and, you know, share that idea of having a, you know, multi-board commission meeting to have that presentation and have that discussion.
Okay.
Because I would really like to see, what I've noticed so far, you know, in my limited time with Woodbridge is there's a very active set of people,
Mhm.
you know, the different commissions, which is really, really nice to see. So what I'd like to do is try to make sure that everybody is, you know, at least trying to work together towards those same goals.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to see you do, because you said you were all a new commission, and there was a EDC before you. Take a look, like you said, back at those old minutes. Is there something in there that they were working towards that you still think is viable? Okay, is there something that they were working towards? If not, that's okay.
Yeah.
But then that might help you to frame as where you go in the future too,
Mhm.
and the type of things that you wanna look at.
And you know what I find interesting about that too? Sometimes when you look at old things like that and you find ideas that were kind of pretty bad, it can trigger a thought that's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can have that sort of reaction to it. So while it might not be, you know, let's continue with this, it might be,
Yeah.
well, not this, but this.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So,
I still can't see why, you know, wayfinding signage comes up on EDC. You know, no, that should be public.
Well, it's
roads.
important if you have something to point them to.
Right.
Right.
Right? Like, that's sort of my approach. Like,
Yeah.
one hand, we're talking about revitalizing the business district, right? But we want to put the signs to point them
Yeah,
there.
well, you
But-
do have a little
Yeah,
area that has potential,
right,
okay? It does have a lot of potential.
right.
You know, when I have a town that has a pizza shop and a liquor store next to each other,
Yeah.
that's not a downtown,
Yeah.
okay? You can make it and,
Right.
and do something.
And that's interesting. Go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
Just to Justin's point, though, and you know, like being a lot of time on my hands, there was a study of our zoning and POCD done, the history of that, and it's got so many footnotes in it, and it refers to all the different commission meetings, it refers to all the different minutes, and it refers to all the videos. And so I think I've probably watched them all. It took me like a year and a half. and I've
You
watched
really
them
don't
all.
have time.
Wow.
But the
Yeah.
point that you
Or
made
did
is,
what he could do
but
in
the
my
point
life
you
to put
made
it-
is really interesting, and it made me very humble when I watched it, because I thought, you know, gosh, you know, the hubris in me, I really was reflective, and I said, you know, this was going on 10 years ago, and I know the people because I grew up in the town as a little boy, and you know, in the 60s, and so it was really interesting, and so it's gonna really, that process, looking back at some of the old stuff and seeing the exact same thing and some of the same people, maybe it's changed a bit, but we maybe can learn some things, and at least I'd like to offer
Good
some of
and
those
bad.
tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how we can avoid some of the issues, because of where I see what happened from an outsider's point of view, not from a living point of view.
Right.
And, you know, we can make new friends.
right.
Yeah,
We can make new friends if we can learn from the past.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, even though
Yeah.
everybody's my friend because, you know, we grew up in the town, you know.
Okay. All right. Well, appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I
Is
know
there
we can-
anything else you wanted to go over, you know, on your topics that you wanted us to say?
No, I mean,
or
we're gonna just kind of move in because we've got a little, we're
I'm
over
looking at
an
your
hour,
pop-
but
I'm
that's.
looking at your pop-ups.
Do you have any, I was actually gonna ask you, do you have any feedback on the pop-ups from any
Um,
experience you've had with other
I'm
towns?
gonna be very honest with you.
Yeah,
The company that you guys were looking at
Mhm.
for that, I used to work with the woman who runs it
okay.
and who developed it. She developed it for Boston suburban communities.
And she's a crook. No.
She's
I'm waiting for the other.
she's a very sweet woman. She's a lot younger than me, but she's a very sweet woman. When I ran a 500,000 square foot shopping center, lifestyle center. That doing a pop up is up to the ownership of those centers. It is not up to the town. I think what you would better look at is business incentive grants for small businesses to give them a jump start. Maybe it's like a $5,000 grant for them to start their marketing campaign as they're coming into town, and using that as a business incubation program, more than paying $30,000 or $100,000 to bring a pop-up into an area that isn't a huge retail area. Okay?
So that's.
When I was filling pop-ups, it was to fill a vacant space during the holidays
But in a thriving center.
in a thriving center.
Right. So
Okay.
I've been
Or
working
thriving
with,
downtown.
when I came on the board, I think it's my third meeting, maybe?
Third one.
I think it's my third meeting, so I'm new to this, and Scott's like, here, take a project. And I took it, and I think it's a really interesting thing.
It is.
As I've gone down the process, though, I agree with you, I don't think the pop-up thing works. What we're still exploring is the mobile option.
To be honest with you, I would much rather see you run community events that bring, like, a farmer's market or a fall craft fair, holiday fair into town. as a town-wide sponsored event and utilize that money towards that. You can't always guarantee that one of those mobile units is gonna work.
Right, well, you
Okay.
can't guarantee anything.
Right, but if you have something as a community event where you can shut down a side street and bring in food trucks, they just did this in Bloomfield, it was absolutely wonderful. They shut it down, they had the farmer's market there, they had the food trucks that came in, and they had vendors, and that included town businesses, they let them come out. Like, they were lucky, they have Pepperidge Farm as one of their, so they came out and passed out a lot of cookies, so I was there. But we were in the process of doing their town center plan, so we set up a booth there. So if, it's something to consider if SLR is doing their community input for the POC. So you can take it, you can do a holiday fair, you can, I just think it could be money that was better spent to draw people into the community for a community event than putting one business there for a little while.
You don't think it's worth the money to vet vendors that potentially could go into retail spaces?
I haven't seen in all my years of retail, okay, and I'm older and have been in retail for a long time. I haven't seen, excuse me, the turnover enough. Sorry, I haven't seen it produce enough vendors. I've seen more vendors walk after, the 3 months or the year that I put them in a space.
Interesting,
Okay,
yeah,
so I think that money can be better spent to
somewhere else, yeah.
to do a business incubation
Yeah.
program. So if you're gonna throw that kind of money out there.
Yeah, that's helpful.
It might be, so I mean, I know we were gonna talk about the retail pop-ups. We're also going to talk about the Connecticut Main Street, which has really come about in the last week or so, and we're now signed up with them to begin the whole assessment process. And really,
We're a member. so-
You're a member. I know, and you're on their website. I saw. What they do is they really specialize in the revitalization of downtown, okay, in multiple communities across Connecticut.
In
right?
case you don't know, they were originally funded through Eversource, which is
Right.
Northeast Utilities. Okay.
Right.
I've worked with them probably 25 years back
Right.
with some of the centers and the towns I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
They're very good. They will
Yeah.
give you a basis as to what your retail climate is, your downtown climate is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who brought them in?
Yes.
Who-
So they came in, I believe it was Sandy Stein and Allison. And they went to see, they put something together up in Georgetown, if you know Richfield, Wilton, what's
Yeah.
the four corners there where they all come
Yeah.
together?
Reading.
Reading, right, I'm from Bethel, right, so I should say.
Yeah. Reading.
So they went up and saw what that community had done around Georgetown and revitalizing it, right? And so what they will do, and they're gonna come in and do like a multi-point assessment on our business district. They actually worked with Peary and Associates, right, who's the placemaking group that was
Yeah.
associated with 2030, with their two tracks. So we're excited to get a chance to work with them, and really, when you hear Michelle talk, and then you know that we've got something, we've got the connectivity work that's gonna be ongoing down there, so you see the bones of it, right? But my whole thing has been, how are we gonna fill it in, right? How do we go down and really, because it's a unique animal, right? Like, you are in the middle of a neighborhood, okay? And it's sort of a mishmash, and like, how do we work around that with all the different constituents? And they have a ton of expertise in this area to kind of add to what Peary and Associates did. And one of the things, Sherry, is that they have a business accelerator program that it's kind of a bolt-on, I think, to what they do, but that's sort of
Denise was just describing.
Yeah.
It might be worth,
Yeah, if you get a chance, they run pretty good programs and webinars that you can sit in on.
Mhm.
Just sign up for their newsletter and they'll send you
Okay.
Yeah.
those programs that I'm doing one over the next couple weeks that they're running. I forgot you, we know Michelle, we knew Patrick McMahon very well.
Mhm.
Right,
He's up in Windsor now.
right.
You know, so we know Patrick, we see him all the time. So they can give you a good overview,
Mhm.
you know, but then you have to decide what you wanna do
Right.
going on from there.
I mean, I don't mean to be a wet blanket on that, but one of the things that came up in my learning process from watching the last POCD from 10 years ago, and one of the things that came up from some of we had consultants back then. This is not the first time we've had consultants. And so we've had planning consultants coming up and through TP&C. I didn't know that, but I learned that by watching all the videos. And there's something that came through to me is I wish, and I think, you know, before we go gangbusters, I think who am I to sit on EDC and say, you know, that's what we need down there in that business district. Here I am, just a person that ran off to New Haven to go to work and come back here and grew up here. But, you know, I really think we need an exploratory committee or, you know, informal, but, you know, some sit downs to say, is this what we want? Because the things I saw was there was no upfront participation. Here's how we're gonna provide you with, I don't know, California suburb, or here's how we're gonna provide you with, and, there's people that live down there, and there are
Right.
people that have businesses down there.
Right.
And we're up here, everybody here, right, is not living in that business district, and we're choosing Main Street. Now, I'm not saying Main Street's bad, and I'm not saying they're good, but I just think that watching some of the failures
Yeah.
of that was not about maybe the good intentions, but was the failure to have exploratory and how it looked. And I grew up in this town and I understand that process. And so it can be very informal explorative, but before you bring that in, I think before you bring them in,
I
you
get
start
what
saying,
you're saying. You're saying
But this
maybe
is a-
we're putting the cart before the horse in this
well, but
respect.
I-
But
Yep.
it's also, we have told communities to wait, put the brakes on. That's not what you need right now. You need to take the 30,000 foot look and then bring it down to what you need. You know, it's well and fine to have, and there's companies all over,
But
Main Street
this is all
great.
I'm saying is that I really fear that we look like the last 2019 when the consultants were in and the streetscapes were in and then we've gotten out of lots of, and I really worry that some people, I want to hear from, is this the kind of Main Street you want?
Yeah,
And it may not,
that's-
because I'm not in that Main Street.
Right.
Okay,
Well,
so you're
when
saying,
you're talking about doing a focus group, is sitting down with those people.
Or,
And saying, "Come and
again,
have
I don't think it
coffee."
has to be that, I don't think it has to be that formal.
Mhm.
But I think
think focus
if it
group.
doesn't start, I don't know, yeah, but I don't know that it has to be that sort of, structured,
No,
sit
we've
down
done,
focus
I'll
groups.
tell you, we
But I think-
did, in Plymouth, we
Yeah.
did coffee and conversations with the mayor and the EDC. We invited the property owners, we invited the business owners, and they came in and they had breakfast with us.
right,
And we sat at big round tables and we had open discussions. What do you wanna see here? You people are living here, you people are operating businesses here. They're the lifeblood down there right now.
Well, and any decision you make needs to be based on data,
right.
right? Because that's what you're saying. You're saying you're living up here, and I'm making decisions for down there, right? And I don't know what it
it's
is.
quality
I
of life,
drive
it's
through
quality
it to
of
go
life
to
decisions.
Chick-fil-A in North Haven. Like, I don't live there.
So, in all fairness, right, when 2030 was progressing this back in 2021, 2022, they had a number of community forums. I know I went to most of them.
Yeah.
To do just that, right?
And this is what they want.
To get the input. Well, it was brought. That's part of the work that Perry did, right? Was they had those sessions and then it was iterative and they kept building and they're like, okay, now what do you think? Now,
We've done
and then
townwide surveys
yeah,
that went out to everybody.
right. Now,
Yeah.
was there a good representation from that neighborhood? I didn't, take attendance or have, data on that, but it was
pretty well publicized and attended, I would say.
Didn't we just do a survey for the town?
The PICD.
Could
Yes.
they extrapolate the different areas of the town? To pull data or no?
Probably not if they're
Is that like a
using- we
PII
can't
thing?
In the programs that we run.
Is that a privacy thing?
It is, you can't get down to their IP address and where they are. It's more broad range, you know, how long have you lived in town?
Right,
I think you
okay.
can't
Well, we
ask
did, we
their
did ask
specific-
what neighborhood.
They did, we
Oh, you
did?
did ask neighbor?
Yeah,
Okay.
but our resident statistician is not here tonight.
Yeah.
Rick.
I'm just interested to
And
see
he would
if
tell
that
you, like,
data-
would we have, is that a sample size that we could,
Okay.
we could draw from, right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's data you already have, I'm just wondering if you can
Right.
extrapolate it from that
Right.
to see if it's different,
Right, you could.
just from a data set.
Yeah, but, so yes, and then I know, Steve, when you all, and Scott, you were there in the last 2030, I saw in the minutes that there were different progressions that they were going to engage the community with the engineering.
Well, that's,
Right.
that's a little bit different, because that's gonna be the community involvement for the lot SIP infrastructure development. You're gonna
Right.
be closing the road, we gotta hear the complaints, so
Right.
that's a little bit different, and all I'm suggesting here is not to be a complete wet blanket, but one of my observation was, knowing my community and loving it so, is that, I think, you know, a little bit exploration is necessary to make sure that Main Street is what is wanted.
Because it's an expenditure that you're.
Well, but also, it's what's wanted, it may be somebody else's vision, but it may not be the vision of what is going on in that community. And I thought that was more the foisting of something, the hubris of some things, and it may be perfect, and I could be wrong, but I've also saw 10 years ago where I could see where it might have been a good thing, but it seemed like the approach was bad. And there wasn't the exploratory thing in the minute, and that's why I asked, not as criticism who brought them in, but I wish I had heard something different about, you know, who brought them in was the people that really want to see Main Street, you know.
Right.
That's, because then they embrace, and
Yeah,
they
you
say,
don't
they,
have any
that
type of
community.
merchants
I mean, you know, if you did it in my neighborhood, I would be that person, right? I would be that person that says,
And-
I want Main Street.
And I think you will see the Connecticut Main Street folks, they do a lot of this engagement too, like that's part of their
I would hope it would be,
whole
yeah.
picture, right? I mean,
But who
we
brings
should-
them in? That's the question.
What do you mean?
But who brings Main Street in?
It's
Or Main
normally
Street.
the town's hire 'em, so.
I understand, but does
Yeah.
Main Street bring Main Street in? Or does
No, it's
Off
usually-
Street bring Main Street in? And that's my point. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I get what you're saying too, because it's important to have the buy-in, because that's what makes it a successful project in the end.
Right.
If you're gonna have people fighting you every step of the way,
And
It
if
doesn't
we don't
have
have
to
that
be-
exploration to know that Main Street wants Main Street,
right?
then I think then you're doomed, just, not because it may not be a good thing, but it's a hubris that you're coming from a perspective, oh, well, Main Street wants Main Street.
Right.
Well, I don't know that Main Street wants Main
Now,
Street.
are they, when Main Street is coming in as part, I don't know what type of contract you have signed with them, but are they doing those focus groups with the businesses down there?
I mean, that is,
Come in and doing the door-to-door walk?
that is part of their process. We're really starting with the assessment, was the conversation we've
Yeah,
had. but-
so you're just doing the assessment, the initial assessment?
Yes.
Okay,
But
I have
we're
seen
building
those
off of a
reports when they do
conversation
them
that's
for
about a
towns.
week old.
Yeah.
But, yeah, but what I'm saying is, I
Right.
wish it had come through here, because I would have, and I don't mean to be a wet blanket, but I would have liked to have seen Main Street saying, I want Main Street. And because that's gonna be crucial to its success.
Right.
And if Off Street says Main Street would be good to have Main Street, that can get that process off completely wrong. Watch the videos. Watch the videos from 2019. I don't think it's because the Main Street people of that day were bad. I think it's because of the approach you did it with. And so I just
Okay.
worry, I put that out there because sometimes we don't learn from our past mistakes. And I did grow up in this community, and I do understand why it derailed some of
Right.
that stuff. And it's not that we moved forward and somebody said, you know, it's, anyway, I don't know
Okay.
if some of the people that are multi-generational may understand that.
Well, I think we can have Main Street come in
Yeah.
and speak with us, obviously, as we
Right,
start to
speak
move
with Main
down.
Street. Main
No,
Street
no,
should speak with
speak
Main
with the
Street.
EDC. okay?
Yeah,
And
Michelle and her team will come in.
yes.
Yeah.
They're very good when they
Right.
come in.
So I think I wanna keep moving through the agenda. So there are certain things that we've touched on tonight, so that we'll kind of accelerate through this. But we had some resolution last night on the oversight on the master plan for the CCW and how that's gonna work. And it's sort of been an ongoing conversation since July around the bar grant. What was the steering committee, what was agreed to last night was they confirmed the structure and composition of a technical assistance committee. And what Tony distributed tonight is sort of the details of that charge and the scope for how Cooper Robertson, the consultant, is going to work, and where the technical assistance committee comes into play. So it was agreed last night, it's an ad hoc committee. It's gonna comprise agriculture, sustainability, conservation, recreation, housing, human services, COOPOP, and EDC. And the way I describe and sort of what I've read through, and we just got the documents today, is that technical assistance committee is really there to report and inform. You know, a big part is for those representatives to report and inform back to the boards and commissions and to provide the technical feedback to Cooper Robertson. Okay, but ultimately, you know, the Board of Selectmen are making the decisions, okay, around this. So, I mean, our role is providing feedback as the iterative process evolves. And I did get a chance to meet with the consultant from Cooper Robertson last night for the first time. Cliff was there with me. I don't know if you had any thoughts on what you saw.
No, I was impressed in, going back and forth with just the makeup of that technical assistance committee was wonderful. But beyond it, I watched the video after I had left, and I thought that, you know, their plan and the way that they're going to go about this, to exactly what you said, you're gonna provide guidance, they're gonna come back, have these focus groups with the different commissions, and then circle back. It will bring what I had mentioned a couple meetings back, the transparency that's gonna be needed, no matter what happens with CCW, which direction we end up going. The transparency's there where people in town are gonna say, okay, well, at least we know what's going on, or that should be the point, and maybe have a better chance of getting something through.
I think a lot of the composition of the technical assistance committee is designed to keep it manageable for them. But if you look at the documents that just came over today, you know, it is as Scott just said, it's sort of on an on-call basis, right, or as needed, right? They will engage this technical assistance committee versus having a standing, you know, every week we're all gonna get together. It's sort of what they need. They have something they want feedback on, right? For example, they would come to me, I share out with all of you, we can provide that feedback through that. So I think it will facilitate it. But I don't know, any other comments, thoughts? I know it's relatively new.
The exclusion on complying with the grant was, hit me, and I'm assuming, but I hope, that Mika is gonna not put this on EDC then, and he's going to use Dale Crew as the part to make sure that the grant, you know, we comply with the grant.
Right.
Is that the understanding? That
You know as much as I do, maybe
Yeah,
a little
I mean,
more.
because it doesn't seem to be an EDC, I mean, that's fine, I mean, we'll see how this plays out, but I think we gotta be careful, this is no longer an EDC grant, and this is a, you know, I mean, the TAC is a virtual committee that's on call, and they exclude any compliance with the grant, so,
Correct.
so.
I mean, the way the grant was written is it was a steering committee, which meant more
Right, so we gotta make sure someone's complying with
directing,
the terms of the grant.
right? And I think Steve Mono said it last night, right? Like, this group's not developing anything, it's not
directing anything,
Correct.
certainly isn't deciding anything, right? So, I know it took them a while to hash this out, but that's, you know, that's where we are, and I think we're gonna make some progress. If you look at the timeline that's in there, Cooper's work will be complete before June of next year.
But somebody's gotta be looking over the grant compliance.
And the environmental, I think, just from
That's
my.
what this is a brownfield area, why it is a
Right.
park planning.
But when I looked at their documents, the environmental studies that are in the bar grant, right, that's gonna be a whole nother, piece. That's outside
that was
of-
yeah,
yeah.
again, I think
Okay.
that's gonna have to be done by Justin and the planners out of the first selectman's office.
okay. Alright, any other questions? No? Okay, let me get caught up here. So POCD we talked about tonight. Business retention, so we are putting that business retention subcommittee together. Cliff, Rick, Sherry, I will join as well. We're gonna get a meeting together with Dale hopefully on Monday. If you all are available, looks like
Yep.
Rick is.
I think I was the last one to say that I think we're all good.
Okay,
18th, yep.
okay, so we can squeeze that in.
18.
Yep.
And really start to, I think, formalize how we approach, I mean, I've had, Tony comes to me and is like, hey, this person really wants to talk to someone at EDC, and if no one's available, you know, I have pretty good flexibility, so I'll shoot into town and go, you know, meet with someone, and Cliff was out at Surf Pro, and we can get there, you know, but more formalizing
Strategic,
that
too.
approach, and I think, you know, ultimately, Goldman, like, the idea here was we were gonna have this, like, database, right? That, so we could start to make some inroads on who's actually here. You know, believe it or not, that's not an easy question to answer, right, Tony? Like, who are the businesses, right? Who are the contacts, the relative contribution, I mean, it's,
We do have a gentleman that works for us called Dave Driver. And Dave Driver does a lot of our business visitation with communities that we work with.
Right.
He goes in to meet with, and a lot of it is he goes in with the major employers and brings in a member of the EDC, like I said, a member of the, you know, like Mika or another selectman, and to meet with them. And like I said, what do you need here as a business? So, know that we have somebody that can take you through that process. If,
Right.
you know, to almost train you how to do it,
right,
if you need to.
right,
So Dave can do that. Dave used to be an executive with, Eversource, and that's what he was in charge of, business for Eversource, going out there, doing that.
okay,
So,
Great.
he was instrumental in business retention. He kept Cigna in Bloomfield from moving away a couple years ago, and they would have lost over 3,000 people that were working
right, wow,
because they had incentives from North Carolina and from Arizona, Kentucky, yeah, and one of those was absolutely no taxes, business taxes,
Forever.
forever,
Wow.
if they moved down there, okay?
nothing forever is a pretty
Yeah.
attractive.
Yeah, I think it was a really good thing,
And
yeah.
they stayed.
And they stayed.
Never is a
Can you
long time.
sweeten that? Yeah.
Can you make that any better?
Right, I want a little more, right.
Yeah, so, yeah, Dave would be happy
Yeah.
to do a couple of those with
Do you
to
think
walk
they
you-
stayed because he was in there with them and was like on the journey with them, or why do you think?
The mayor was there, there was a good contingency. Mike Goldman from Goldman in York was there with them. They met with Cigna's real estate people. And the funny thing is, they ended up, after all these discussions and keeping them there, bringing in another division into the Bloomfield office
Wow.
from another community. So they actually increased the workforce.
Yeah.
So like an example, I mean that's a great example,
Yeah.
right? A Woodbridge example, I would say about a year or two ago, right? We had a little wine shop that opened down on Bradley Road, right? And the EDC, we had a little get together to try to bring the business community out and everything else. It was great. They opened and we kind of knew what Toll Brothers was coming next door, and then one day they were gone. Okay, like within the first year.
Yeah.
And we as the EDC had no idea.
No, you and I, you know, when
We
I
just
ran
drove by and
I
it was
ran
dark.
shopping centers, I had people go out in the
Right.
middle of the night.
So,
So, you know.
but the question is, how do we get closer, right? And
They're never, as a business owner, they're never gonna let you get that close, especially small business owners, to
Right.
where they're hurting and they're gonna have to close up shop.
right,
It's reality.
right,
But you wanna have your face in front of them so that your businesses know that if they do need help,
Mhm.
or if they wanna do an expansion,
right,
that you're there to help them. We had one business that was expanding, and then they found out that they bought 2 other businesses where they were looking at expanding wasn't quite big enough for them.
mhm,
So could the town find them a better space? And yeah,
Right.
they went out and they found them a better space,
right,
you know?
right,
So it's the knowledge of that and getting those businesses comfortable enough to say, hey, how can you help me? Or,
Mhm.
hey, I wanna bring this division in, but what are you gonna do to help me? Is there an incentive
Right.
that the town can do? Or what do you have for incentives to
mhm,
keep me here or for me to open my business here?
right,
You know, and that's what I said, even the small businesses, to have some type of, incentive grant for them,
mhm,
or incubation grant, so.
Right.
So it's not always the big guys, it's, think of the little guys too.
right, right. Okay, so I think, Sherry, are we on the retail and pop-ups anymore?
So the only thing I would say, so just so let everyone know where we're at. So we stepped away from doing the bigger, total, like bringing people into a retail space, exploring the mobile side of it right now. We have a proposal from them. We have an 8-week proposal in the $20,000 range. We have a 12-week proposal in the $30,000 range. Mika had asked, because again, we don't know if this is gonna work for us, right? We're still in this like space of,
Is it going into a private development?
we don't know where it can go. They're gonna work, they said they would work with us to figure out where it would go and where it
See,
would work
because,
best.
you have to think of, insurance,
Mhm.
infrastructure, power, things
Yep.
like that. I'm gonna even say security.
Yeah,
Okay, so all of those factors have to be worked in. It may be that you're only seeing a $20,000 cost to bring them here, but that $20,000 cost might actually be $30,000 or $40,000.
so the way they've positioned it to me and in the proposal, that all of that should be taken into consideration. And again, we are literally at the
Okay.
proposal stage.
And you have to also be very careful, because if they do choose that they are going onto a private development site,
Mhm.
that the town allows that.
Yep.
Okay?
Mhm.
Because then the town is taking on their own liability on a private
Mhm.
owner's site.
Right.
Okay? So it's not cut and dry.
Yep.
Mhm.
No,
If you were saying, okay, the town owns this park, I'm gonna let you put the pop-up, on the town park, that's fine.
well, they recommend a town municipality, like they recommend a town location is what they've
Mhm.
recommended. But they said they would work with us and consult with us around where it would
Where
go.
is there, you want them to go into like the downtown area?
Don't know, put them over here maybe, center of town, don't know.
Okay. Do you know what type of business they're looking at?
So, right now, they said they would facilitate to bring the vendors into us, and they have a very deep vetting process.
Yeah.
And we would have to work with the Chamber of Commerce's to help them kind of facilitate that for
Right.
us.
I mean, in terms of sourcing and vetting, I think
Yeah.
that's the big.
Yeah, I look at them as, that's, I think, one of the best benefits they would bring is the sourcing and the vetting.
Yeah. And they do need traffic.
Yeah.
They need,
And
Yeah.
so that's the piece that you hit on, and I think that's where we're all stuck right now,
Yep.
right? In what we've seen in these concepts, and what's put in front of us, seem to be
Brookline.
vibrant.
Yeah, which is
You're
not our
shopping
area.
areas
Brook-
with a hole.
Needham.
Brookline,
Right.
all that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
right?
it's,
Right.
one of the, actually on her LinkedIn, because we are friends on LinkedIn, she was just talking about going into Portland, Maine,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
okay? You're not Portland.
No,
I could see something like this, to be honest with you, going on at Broadway at York Square,
yep,
okay? Down at Yale.
Right.
right.
Yeah, we don't have the traffic, is what you're
Right,
saying.
you don't have foot traffic, your traffic that is down there is kind of like drive by
Mhm.
in the, you know, the main area down there. And that's why I have qualms about it.
Yeah, no, so
And-
do we,
Yeah.
right? So where we are in the process right now is Meek had asked for a meeting with them to understand, you know, do they really understand who we are and what we are?
I will tell you, she does some beautiful events in like Seaport.
Yeah, no,
She actually was when I worked for WS Development out of Boston. She was a general manager like I was, and then she went on to ancillary income and pop-ups. She does some great things. She's a very good, talented person. But hers, like I say, are in more heavily foot traffic areas.
Yeah, so we are where you are at right now. We have the meeting with Mika on the 25th, just to kind of have that conversation, to say, like, are we gonna go or not, right? Because we do have hesitation in this.
Yeah.
There is a meeting that they asked, when I reached out to them, and I was like, when you and I had the conversation that day, she actually reached out to me. She's like, maybe we should have a prep call before the call.
Okay.
So that's the 21st, so I wanted to see if you wanted to join that
Sure.
with me.
Yeah, just
Yeah, I'll,
shoot me an
I'll
email.
forward the email.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have a prep call, and we may find out more there,
Okay.
where we may not wanna have the 25th call, but that's where we are right now.
What do you ask? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was wondering, is this for this holiday season
Oh,
or
God,
for
no, no, no.
summer?
It's a 6-month program. I
It's
mean,
a
it takes
6 month-
it's a 6-month from planning to activation.
Okay, but how long is the activation itself?
There's an 8-week program and a 12-week program
Okay,
on a mobile unit.
okay.
Out of curiosity, is the funding there, or is it something that?
So
have to
you
go out
can
there.
use, is it ARPA?
We can use
We can use
yeah.
ARPA funds for this.
Okay, ARPA funds, don't they have to be utilized by the end of this year?
They have to have a contract in place by the end of this year and can be used in 25 or 26.
Would you be better off instituting a facade improvement or a business incubation with that money?
I don't know.
By December 31st. That would be a little challenging,
I've
but
seen it
yeah.
done
Con-
quicker.
contracted, right? Like,
Right.
Well, no, it's a program that's drawn up, that's a grant program administered through the town. to
You wouldn't have to
businesses.
spend the money.
You wouldn't have to
No,
spend the
no,
money,
I know,
you have
but
to
I mean,
allot the money to it.
right. You would need to be
Okay,
under.
which is what a lot of communities did. They did facade improvement grants, they did signage grants for businesses.
Mhm.
They did matching grants with their ARPA funds, like that.
How much money is available in ARPA?
I mean, the cost on this project's about 30,000.
Yeah.
So somewhere around there.
Mhm.
But yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's
I just
where
So
hate
we
to see
continue-
you spend it to
We
spend
continue
it.
to explore, and
Yeah.
look, I think too, this is, I've been here 11 years. This is not a town I shop in. I leave to shop, right? I
Where do you
don't,
go shopping?
well, South Norwalk,
Okay, so
or Hartford, right? I'm a Nordstrom person, so that's where I
Okay.
go, right? Because I'm just I came from New Jersey, so I'm a Nordstrom
Yep.
person.
worked in that
And-
mall when it was brand new.
But the
Bible
thing
there.
is, I think, one thing I think this town needs is different thinking, right? And I think this mobile unit or these pop-ups identified or went and filled the bucket of a little bit different.
Yeah.
Something a little bit different. Where I like the idea of the pop-up is some sort of a holiday type thing,
Yeah.
right? Which we could use next year, and you could bring in, if it's an 8-week program, you bring in 4 different vendors, and they pop out every 2 weeks, right? And I could see the moms of the town getting into that type of thing,
Mhm.
because we have nothing like that here, right? If I go buy a baby, I've told Scott this a million times, if I go buy a baby gift, I go to Guilford to buy a baby gift.
Yeah.
Right, because there's nothing here.
Mhm.
So again, this was more in the line of, can we bring in vendors? Can we think differently? Now also too, I love thinking differently, but if it's not gonna do anything for us, you have to spend your money somewhere else. So I also recognize that too. But I think it's worth taking it to the end to explore it, to then say, you know what, this isn't probably the best for our
Yeah.
group.
I would love to see like a holiday market on the green or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
You know, but one vendor isn't gonna do that. That changes
Mm-mm.
every
True.
week or every weekend.
Yeah.
You know, is that money better spent to contract with someone that would run a holiday market for you? You know, and put that together. Something that's gonna, you know, maybe it's only for 1 day or 2 days, but it's something that's gonna draw your entire community in for that day. That's not gonna be some, you know, one-off stopping at this pop-up.
Yeah, like Philadelphia does that.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
I was just there for a summer event that they had
Yeah.
a bunch of pop-ups. They do the Christmas.
you have to have a
Holidays.
reason for them to come, and one is not a reason. I think you need more than one.
Right.
You know, not one that is, you know, this weekend it's something, next week it's something else, next weekend it's something else. It's gotta have a little bit of volume to it, you know, or it's gotta be something special. You know, we would bring in, there was a farm truck that looked like an old type farm, but it would sell Christmas wreaths on it, and it would sell, like beeswax gifts and farmer's cow milk, you know, the peppermint milk for the holiday season. But that was in conjunction with like an ice carving event on the green and something like that. You know, something that families would wanna come to and spend their money at. You know, don't do ice carving of Rudolph when it decides to be 65 degrees on December day, though. Been there. So, you know, we can't control the weather, but, you know, I'd like to see you make more of an impact on something for your community.
Good perspective.
So,
And maybe do we combine business retention with new business? Just a thought.
Oh, from a subcommittee standpoint?
Yeah.
I mean, you could do that.
Because I'm
right?
thinking, you know, like, in other words, when you were saying you wanted to bring in the farmer's market, the holiday market, or whatever it was,
Yeah.
you sort of need to have that relationship, and maybe not
Right.
necessarily a relationship on the retention side, but on the new business, or kind of both, right? It's kind of like,
Yeah.
it's just the relationship
Yeah.
side.
Right.
So you say, hey, I got some money.
yeah.
Do you
a
want to
farmer's
run this
market
for
here
me, or
on
can
the
you help
green.
me get the locals to do
We
it,
do a
because we
Christmas
can't do
tree.
it from up here?
Sparked my interest to do a
From the
Christmas
EDC
tree.
point
The
of
Boy Scouts do a Christmas tree sale.
Yeah.
And the whole community goes there, so
Yeah.
it would be so nice if there would be.
I was gonna say, all we have is the Boy Scouts selling Christmas trees. and
Yes.
that's all
So
we
is that something to grow that event?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
To grow that event and make it, so how long are they there selling their
a
Christmas?
few weeks.
Yeah,
Probably
from
3,
right
4.
around
Yeah.
Thanksgiving
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
December.
Until they
One
run
of
out
my
of
first
trees.
jobs, my grandfather sold Christmas trees up in Springfield, Mass.
All right.
And he
So-
sold it.
I don't think we have public comment. Next meeting, so Thursday, December 12th, and we will be joined by David Fink, who will speak on housing as an economic driver, workforce housing. I had a chance to speak with David, thanks to Scott connecting us. It'll be a good conversation, without a doubt. All right, motion to adjourn.
We just, before you do, I'm sorry, just if everybody wants to take a look, when we're talking about Main Street and your points, look at their website. They're gonna go through and explain, for instance, just the 4 points of their management score, how they're going about the components of a vibrant Main Street. Things like this that are all gonna combine with 2030. And I think it was a very, very interesting read, and it didn't take very long. I mean, you could get through this website in 20 minutes.
Oh, yeah, there's a ton in there.
But there's a lot of great stuff, so I
And
just
you can see how it would apply.
You want the input.
I don't.
Yeah.
We
We got it, we got
As long
it.
as Main
We
Street,
got it.
as long as Main Street likes that Main Street, I like
Scott,
Main
when
Street.
is Main
I
Street
like
coming?
it,
Or is
you know what I
Main Street
mean?
coming
If
to
Main
speak
Street
to us
doesn't,
too?
then I wanna go in a
They
different, I wanna
will.
go in a
They will.
different direction.
We're just getting going.
Okay.
As long as Main
Okay.
Street likes Main Street. To me, it sounds great, but I don't
So-
know, I'm not.
So moved.
Where's,
Steve's moved. Second.
Steve?
Sherry, you want to second this? Sherry
I second it.
All in favor?
All right.
aye.
All right.